of the Traffic and Parking Advisory Board meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome. The Traffic and Parking Advisory Board reviews items of interest regarding parking and traffic items. We are an advisory board, and our favorable recommendation today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council. The council can accept or reject any recommendation from this board. If you don't agree with the decision, you can discuss that item with any council member. If the board does not recommend an item, a common council member may, in fact, sponsor a new ordinance regarding that item. All items do require 2 readings before the common council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, July 28th at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to comment on that item at that time, though the council will take no action. On Tuesday, August 11th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading, at which time the council will take action. You will again be allowed to speak at that time. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you'd like to speak, please step to the podium, give your name and address. I do ask that you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item. The item will then come back to the board for discussion and action. Would you please call the roll, please, for attendance purposes?
Staple?
Here.
Shazinski?
Here.
Krause?
Here.
Schneider?
Here.
Becker?
Here. First item on this afternoon's agenda is approval of prior minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Anyone with any comments, questions, additions, or deletions? Seeing none, please call the roll on approval of minutes.
Staple?
Aye.
Shazinski?
Aye.
Krause?
Aye.
Schneider?
Aye.
And Becker?
Aye. Next item on the agenda is public comment, and since we don't have anyone in attendance, I'm going to dispense with that, other than to say that if someone does in fact want to make comment on anything that we do have on this agenda or any future agenda, please submit them via email to trab@ci.oshkosh.wi.us. It will get to all of us in written form. As far as new business goes, the first item is review of proposed street reconfiguration on South Main Street between 8th Avenue and South Park.
Okay, this is a request from the planning department. The planning department's been working with developers in the Sawdust District on potential plans for the district. Lack of parking in the area is one of their main concerns. The district plan calls for reconfiguring South Main Street to address some of those concerns, and it's currently scheduled for reconstruction in 2023, pending budget approvals. However, in the interim, one of the items that was identified as a interim step that could be taken to help alleviate some of the developers' concerns was restriping the road. This would be South Main Street from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and that would allow parking to be immediately added. And this is for South Main Street. We're looking at between 8th Avenue and South Park Avenue, as you mentioned. If we did that, we could potentially add 97 parking spaces between South 8th and South Park. Some more details on it. We started at 8th because we wanted to stay, as far as we could away from the bridge. The traffic counts are 12,000 on South Main between East 8th and East 9th, 9,000, and this would be average daily traffic volume on South Main between West 12th and South Park. So traffic volume similar to West Murdoch, which we restriped, many of you may remember, about 4 or 5 years ago. So the traffic count wise, 1 lane of traffic could be supported in each direction. Another issue here is it's a connecting highway, but the connecting highway is under city maintenance. So talking to the DOT, they don't have a major concern with us if we dropped a lane on that stretch of South Main Street. And then one of the other cons is we'd lose a little bit of interconnecting highway aid for maintenance. So each mile of interconnecting highway that the city maintains, we get a little bit of money from the state for that, and there's a formula for that. In this case, it'd be about $6,200. So that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, this is kind of an aerial view that our engineering department had put together of how it could potentially be restriped. We'd be looking at 11 foot lane, 11-foot lane in each direction, and then an 8-foot parking on each side of the road. I think a good comparison is maybe parts of the reconstructed Oregon Street would be something that would be a little bit similar to what we would be looking at here. So that's kind of the gist of it. And then I have Mr. Alan Davis, our planning director, is here, as well as Mark Lyons, who's in charge of the planning department. I guess I should say Alan's the department head for the division. So they can fill you in if you have any questions or need more details on what the developers are thinking. And then James Robbie, who's the director of public works, is here also, as well as myself. So if you have any questions that we can answer.
Is there other alternatives with the road diet, the turn lane? It
There's
says road diet, so.
Yeah, I think what you're thinking of is the road's not wide enough to put a center turn lane in, if that's what, I think
Yeah.
that's what you're thinking. It would just be, what we would do here is we would enter, or we would stripe turn lanes at the major intersections. However, it's not wide, so you'd lose parking and add a turn lane at the major intersections. But away from the intersections, you would have parking.
What intersection is 9th and South Park, or with the one by the arena?
As, as far as the turn lanes go, it was 9th, South Park. Guess I gotta look at 12th.
Instead of lights, so that's why I was.
I mean, except the type
11th,
small, it
yeah.
looks like
Okay, there we
almost
go.
all of them
Yeah.
from 9th out to South Park.
Is there any,
Yeah.
Type.
was there any concern on speed and at night lighting with people getting out of their cars all the way along there? Having just one lane and then the car parking lane?
I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, generally, the speeds are generally reduced when you go to one lane in each direction. So that would be,
I mean, if there's an 11-foot drive lane and you have your car parking lane at 8 feet, you open up your door, are you into the road?
no, 8 foot's pretty much a standard parking. It's a standard parking width for a parking lane. It gives you enough room to open your door. I mean, it would be tight. But no, there's enough room where you should still be able to pass. That's a standard parking lane.
What's the parking width on North Main? Seems like it's narrow there, like,
Yeah.
As far as the parking lane
yeah,
goes,
compared to other streets where like I wanna open my door, it seems
Yeah.
like it's more narrow over there than.
I don't know, do you know off the top of your head, James?
The parking's probably 8, but the driving lane is probably not 11 on North Main Street.
No, it's,
It might be.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's why the drivers are
Okay.
closer to your car.
I just don't want that kind of situation on that road.
we didn't want it on North Main.
Yeah,
either.
of course, yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably the driving lane's a foot less than.
Okay.
I could look it up, but it'd take a little while.
Well,
Any-
what would it account for, like if the driving lane is narrower, they're gonna be closer to your car, you know.
Right. Yep.
Any idea what the utilization of the city lots is in that general vicinity?
The city parking lots, actually, it's generally fairly low right now. We're actually reconstructing that avenue, or excuse me, that's a road over. We actually don't have any city parking lots on South Main Street that I'm aware of.
We don't, but as you point out, there's one a block over and arguably 3 blocks up. on
Yeah,
Main
there's
Street.
one at 10th and Oregon that's being reconstructed in September, which has real low utilization currently. I'm not sure if the low utilization is due to, it's a gravel lot right now, so it's in really rough shape, or if there's just not demand there. It's really low right now, as well as then there's the one over
Nebraska?
of Oregon and 8th. Yep, there's one over in Nebraska. Last time we did a parking utilization study, they were generally low. However, I don't know, Alan, you might be able to add a little bit more on the developer's perspective and why we're requesting this.
Yes, starting up at 8th, the city and the RDA is looking to redevelop that whole neighborhood. We've acquired and demolished a lot of the blighted properties there. We're expecting to have a lot more demand for both retail, commercial, as well as services and potential office uses. And then working south, the guy there at the corner with Old Miles Kimball building. He's always looking for parking because he doesn't have enough parking on his site for what he wants to put at the Miles Kimball building. Across Ninth, that developer has approached us multiple times to come up with parking on street because he can't get enough parking behind the building. The people there at Fifth Ward Brewing have approached us multiple times about getting more parking. They have a little parking on site. The Tasty Thai place has also approached us, as well as the arena itself. We've gotten multiple calls from the neighborhood saying the arena doesn't have enough parking, and another 60 or 90 spaces on South Main would alleviate some of the parking in the neighborhood that can't be accommodated on the arena property. And that's just on the west side. On the east side, that I expect will be all redeveloped. Right now, we don't have any specific plans other than the Sawdust District that identifies a lot of entertainment, personal services, and some residential uses on that side. So my expectation is the parking demand will not go down in that neighborhood, and I expect it will actually go up. The other thing, we are accommodating bicycles on back roads or side streets or new bike paths, so this is really just for pedestrian safety on South Main. There's a general concern that the traffic is only about 2.5 or 3 feet away from the sidewalk when they go down South Main, and all the property owners thought having a parking lane there to kind of buffer the front door to the traffic would be more attractive for any kind of customer service for all those businesses. I think we got one email recently, but I can tell you when we were going through the Sawdust District plan over the last year or two, we had multiple meetings with the neighborhood, including developers and residents, and parking was a common theme that they brought up, and that's why I think it got reflected in the Sawdust District plan. Is this would be one way to encourage the redevelopment of South Main, because that's unfortunately been one of our more blighted areas, and the property owners think that providing this parking would be a major step forward in giving them an opportunity to redevelop those sites to a bigger and better use for the city.
Yeah, and we did get the one email from Mr. Berglund that Jane had passed out to you. I don't know if we got other ones, but we did notice all the property owners up and down the stretch of South Main Street as well as adjacent. So this is the one, that's the only one I'm aware of. But.
And the way we left it with those residents is that when we adopted the Sawdust District plan, it had the plan for this being the 2 lanes and parking. So I think that's why they were satisfied with it, and they're just assuming this is going to be the follow through what was approved with the plan.
When South Main is reconstructed, it's gonna be reconstructed the same width it is now?
No idea.
Okay. When is the 9th Avenue extension across planned? Then over the railroad tracks?
I think it's in the CIP for 2022
I
now.
don't think it's that early, is it?
I don't have it in front of me, but we keep pushing it back a year because the Pioneer doesn't redevelop. I think as soon as the Pioneer would redevelop, we'd have to start working on it almost immediately.
There are no plans to close the Pioneer Drive until that's 9th?
Well, we'd have to do it simultaneously because we are trying to build the Riverwalk on Pioneer Drive and starting that in 2021 at the latest. So that's why I think 9th Avenue, if there's nothing happening on the Pioneer, they could probably limp by with just 14th as an access. But if they actually start redeveloping the island, they're going to need 9th Avenue sooner rather than later.
And one last thing. I was at the corridor study for South Park and 9th, and it was brought up about possibly adding the 20th Ave extension, to South Main, adding that back into the master plan, for down the road. And the moderator of the demonstration said that he thought it was a good idea, and a few others did as well. So I was just wondering if any thought was ever given to that.
I can't speak to that one. That one.
That's been an issue going on for 20 years in this town. I mean, in
least.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at
well,
least.
yeah. And like years ago, you didn't have anything over there, but now you got the arena and the sawdust district, so it might be a good idea to bring that to the forefront again.
I know we are acquiring the right-of-way on the east side of Main Street with the arena. The RDA dedicated an extra 15 or 20 feet, and we'll be doing that with the other RDA obtained properties on the east side. So we're hoping in 2023, or whenever we can get that right-of-way, we'll have about another 20 feet to work with.
I've attended pretty much every visiting session that's been on for various projects around town. And one thing that always crops up is like making like a boardwalk along Lake Winnebago, similar to how we have the Riverwalk. You know?
Yep, we're just now starting to look at how we would extend the Riverwalk south of the Pioneer, going down that way as well. So there's a lot of complicating factors with property lines down there that I can't talk without a map, but we're hoping that we would finish the Riverwalk in the next few years by the Pioneer, and the next logical extension would be further to the south.
Yeah, I was talking to one guy at one of the sessions, and he said he owns a lot of that property, and he said he would let it go over to the city to construct a walk there.
I had similar conversations, so I'm optimistic.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful area. When you come in by Artie and Adams, you got that great lake shore. It'd be nice to take advantage of more of that.
Was any consideration given to what happens after a herd game as part of this process?
Probably
Because,
have a lot of
with-
officers directing traffic.
well, this is true, but, which is what we always have. Again, no issues there, but with parking on South Main, it's gonna jam up real fast. People aren't gonna be able to get away from the curb unless we've got officers letting cars off the curb. Whereas the way it's configured now, everybody heads west on one of the numbered streets, more or less.
Yeah, they
Very-
kind of block off the area by the arena, and then you have to go either north or south.
Right, but my point being is if you're on the east side of South Main trying to go north of the arena, you ain't getting away from that curb
Right.
unless you have some help.
You
Because,
could make the area by the arena a loading zone during games.
but that's not the issue. The issue is after,
Well, then
The
there might be
game's
those
done.
cars trying to get into the traffic. It would only be from the west side.
It's kind of like Menominee Park on a typical 4th of July year. It's hard. It takes an hour to get away.
it does, but 4th of July's once.
Yeah.
Herd games are,
Yep.
I don't know how many there are, but more than once.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd have one lane instead of two going each way.
And arguably with traffic needing to pull away.
I know that currently the traffic from the games I've been to flows really well and clears out within like 5-10 minutes. But that's what the officers, controlling both the lights and blocking off traffic in each direction so that they're not, so you're not crossing, so you either have to go north or south. And that seems to be working really well. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, on the traffic flow after herd games, or if you're involved with that or not.
I actually have never been involved in the traffic aspect of it. I do get what he says about it. Sometimes you just kind of have to weigh, not everything's perfect. But as far as how that flows, I've never been a part of that traffic
Okay.
direction myself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it would be when that traffic released, we'd still have the police officers directing the traffic. The level of service probably wouldn't be as good. I mean, that's true.
Well, arguably, if you're sitting in your car waiting to pull away from the curb, it's zero because you're not going until somebody
Yeah, I
cuts
see
you a
what you're
break.
saying. Okay, you're talking about if you were parked on the side of the road.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, it would take you a while to get out that way if you've used on-street parking. And then,
Which is going to be in higher demand at herd games once free parking disappears, whenever that happens to be.
Right.
So,
yeah, potentially. Right now, I know a lot of, like Alan mentioned, a lot of the people that are going to the herd games are parking on those residential streets. Granted, there probably isn't as much traffic, but they're seem to be managing to get in and out. And I don't know, Mark, can you hear us now, or can you speak?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
There we go.
I was just wondering, I don't have it in front of me. I do remember the drawing, but the long-term plan for the width of South Main Street, it's wider, but the layout was similar, if I remember correctly.
Correct. The long-term thought for South Park would be the right-of-way would be widened to what used to be in front of the arena.
Which is about 80 feet.
Yep. And the reconstruction would include the wider terraces, better planting, but include the nicer sidewalk that we have in front of the arena. Still only have the one travel lane in each direction with parking on both sides.
So that is what's.
Other notes,
Oh, go ahead.
I only touched on it early on. This is really driven from the Sawdust District meetings we had with business owners in the area and residents and developers. Current business owners really struggle to be able to have enough business because people have nowhere to park. And they felt it was really negatively affecting their businesses with no parking on Main. So the business owners were pushing for us to look at parking. Also then, talking with residents and people who walk the area, they felt unsafe in the area because back a curb was travel lane. By adding parking where we can, we're at least moving the flow of traffic a little bit off the back of the curb. People said they really didn't feel safe right now in the current area. So this could help give some comfort level improvements to the people that are walking in the area for businesses as well.
So basically, this is what we're looking at is potentially restriping it short term. However, that's the point I wanted to make, that the long-term plan does call for a similar layout.
Correct. The long-term plan that we had looked at basically the exact same layout, just with some nicer improvements to go along with it.
What businesses are concerned along that stretch of Main?
So on the north section, we had, I think Alan had talked earlier, we had Five Guys who had reached out to us. I'm trying to think of specifics. Is it I think it's a Thai restaurant. We talked to them. They were one that were very concerned about how their door feeds out directly on the back of the curb. And they said they heard from a lot of their patrons that they had concern there.
The Fifth Ward Brewing has some parking, but they need more parking, and they prefer not to have their customers park in the residential area. I don't see them parking all the way on Oregon and walking over to Fifth, because there's on-street parking in between. Then at the corner of 9th and Main, on the south side, the developer owns that stretch along there, has tried multiple times to get businesses located in those ground level spaces. He's not been able to do that because he says he can't offer them parking. And then the guy who owns the property to the north, the old white Miles Kimball building, he needs more additional parking for that building based on his redevelopment, because he doesn't have much of a footprint left to add parking where the building, just to the north of the building, because the building's staying where it is. So he's looking for at least another 20 spaces that are walkable for his customers. And then the RDA, as a developer, we're hoping to be able to sell that land to people who can provide both residential and commercial and office retail type space, both on the east side and west side of 9th for redevelopment. So the more parking we can offer, the better it would be, we think. So South Main, we've heard it consistently from the property owners and the residents and the developers who want to develop there, that we need more parking on South Main.
And just to second that, I can't imagine any retail or restaurant that would look at that place without parking. With the parking there is there, you just never would be able to support. But the cost of building new especially.
That's what we've heard.
Oh, I was just looking at what was between, say, 8th and South Park, and you're discussing other properties on either side, because there's a couple of neighborhood taverns there and a couple garages, and so I was just wondering.
Yeah, but we didn't hear complaints from them.
No, and a dog grooming, you know, and I was wondering, the volume they need for parking is pretty small, plus the two little neighborhood taverns. I mean, they've got their own parking area. So I was,
On the east side, you have Renke, he doesn't need a whole lot of parking.
Probably future
there
state,
isn't a
right?
volume
But
there.
future state, we
Yep.
would, yeah.
Fortunately.
Well, yeah, in this day and age, but maybe 10 years down the line, who knows? But I was wondering if these were the businesses that were asking for help.
I think Tasty Thai and Fifth Ward are existing businesses that would like more, and the property owners of the two others would like more. To help them recruit retail or restaurant or tavern.
I know that's been a problem forever with the old bank building, Maine and Washington. They just don't have enough parking, and until they get parking, it isn't going to fill. It's the same problem here. I'm sure they won't develop it until they have parking.
Is there any plans to add any additional off-street parking?
Long-term, there
Yeah.
could be. The city will work with the redevelopment people as time goes by. On the east side, for sure, because that's where the RDA is gonna own most of the land. So I expect there's gonna be some parking on the east side. But right now, those property owners still own their property, so we've identified in the Sawdust District plan some, say, neighborhood parking behind Main Street. But I think that's beyond 2023 to actually come to pass.
Are these the open areas like between 7th and 8th?
Between 7th and 8th, and all the way down to the arena. If you look at the Sawdust plan, there's big parking lots on the back side of all those businesses on Main Street. That's what we're proposing, at least.
Hmm.
Yeah, as Alan mentioned, part of the Sawdust plan was have parking located behind the businesses that were fronting North Main.
And that would be the long-term off-street parking, but we're years away from achieving that. And this would probably be a relatively inexpensive short-term goal that help the existing businesses and the landlords that are trying to recruit people right now.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? Well, then I have one final one for you, Mr. Collins, and that is, what is it that you want from us? Because it just says review.
I guess it would be a recommendation or to vote in support or not of it, of the proposed street reconstruction,
Or restriping.
restriping, I guess. Technically, there's no ordinance or anything, so there's nothing that would technically go to council, but we would look for a favorable recommendation, because this would be a major restriping. And what would happen, well, if the board did support this, we would have to obviously change some parking ordinances in the future.
Are you looking to get this on this year's, I'm assuming, agenda for painting purposes?
Yes. Yep, that's what we were hoping, and we'd have to do it in the August-September timeframe. But until we wanted to get the support first, and if there is the support, then we would proceed forward. Then I could get a little better idea of which parking ordinances we needed to change and where and how. So we could iron that detail out after. But in order to do street painting, it has to be ideally above 60 degrees. So generally, if you don't get it done by September, really tough to do. We'd be looking at, and we do have a funding source to remove the pavement markings, and then we haven't decided yet whether we'd restripe it in-house or contract it. However, we'd look, in this case, we would try water blasting, which we haven't tried yet. As you know, when we do the scarifying, that it hasn't worked the best. I mean, it's still the most common technique to remove pavement markings. However, the water blasting is a little bit newer technique, and I'm told that it should be a little bit cleaner, so that's, for a stretch like this, that's what we would try this time.
You have to hire somebody for that, or?
Yes, yep.
We have our own means to scarify it, or?
We do, however, we only have a small machine for this large of an area. We wouldn't be able to probably do that in-house. It would take us a long time. Whereas like the contractors have, even if we scarified it, they have a huge truck that comes and does it, and they probably, when they did Sawyer Street, they did it in half a day. We'd be out there for a couple weeks with our machine.
I'd like to move to approve this as written.
Second.
Anyone have any comments on the issue at hand as presented? Seeing none, call the roll.
Sable,
Aye.
Shazinski,
Aye.
Rousey,
Aye.
Von Schneider,
All right,
Becker.
No. Which brings us to Agenda 2, review of the 2019 bike crash data.
This is, remember, this was when Councilmember Peschel was on the board a few months ago. We kind of looked at the 2019 crash report, and I reported out on the vehicle crashes. He was wanting some more information as far as bicycle crashes. So I did do a review of that. There really wasn't a trend. I think he was looking more on how bike lanes affected or did not affect the crash history this last year. So as far as that goes, only one of the crash was involved with a bike lane. There were a few with bikes on sidewalks, a couple where the bicyclist and or motorist had faulty brakes. So this is just some data. I know there's, in the community, there's been ongoing debate whether bikes are safer on the sidewalks or in bike lanes, or they should be in the travel lane. But anyway, so in 2019, there were approximately 16 crashes that involved bikes. I would say a quarter of those were where the biker was at fault. A couple where they failed to stop at a stop sign. One was intoxicated person biking. And then there were the other crashes. There were a couple, one with faulty vehicle brakes. There were a couple that were related to inattentive driving as well. There really wasn't a consistent trend. Every crash I kind of looked at was a little bit unique. So I think what Councilman Peschel was looking to see is if bike lanes positively or negatively impacted crashes, and I guess from the analysis I couldn't see one way or another. The one that was involved in the bike lane just happened to try to cross the street without looking clearly. So like I said, there really isn't anything conclusive as far as bike lanes go. There were a few crashes with bikes on sidewalks, but I don't know if that was related to them being on the sidewalk or because a couple of them were where they failed to stop at stop signs. So that's kind of a brief analysis of that.
Anyone with any questions on any of that for Mr. Collins? All right. Which then brings us to table business, which I don't think there is any technically.
Nope.
Nope, so that brings us to staff statements.
And so the last thing is just an update on the West 9th Avenue reconstruction, the layout that we looked at the last meeting. So our city engineer and myself did a presentation at the last council meeting, and they will be considering that layout again at tonight's meeting. There was a little bit of a break in there where there wasn't a council meeting because of 5 weeks in the month. So it'll be tonight. We'll be considering that again. We've gotten quite a bit of email feedback from many of the residents that were at the last traffic board meeting, as well as a few others that have been forwarded to council, as well as any other information that has come in. So we're still have the 4 different layout options for, as you had asked for at the last meeting. So all 4 of those options were presented to council, and they'll be discussing it and making a recommendation tonight. And just to refresh your memory, the 4 options are a travel lane in each direction with a shared left turn lane and bike lanes. There was the option that Mr. Becker suggested with 4 travel lanes, and then there's an option with parking on one side, and then there's an option with parking on both sides in lieu of the center turn lane. So those 4 options will be considered at tonight's council meeting.
Does anyone have any requests for future agenda items?
And then only one other, I just thought of one other update is,
certainly.
since we talked about the West 10th and Oregon parking lot, that is scheduled to begin construction. The contractor's thinking September, so.
All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.